Hello friends, Pete the Drummer here, and in this video I'm going to make myself a new snare drum. But it's not going to be made out of wood, it's not going to be made out of metal, it's not even going to be made out of acrylic. Nope, this new drum is going to be made out of PVC. Let's get started. Okay, so before I actually get to putting this drum together, let me give you a little bit of a backstory. So I'm on YouTube, and in my feed comes a link to a video, which I will link in the description below, but it says PVC snare drum build. So I was intrigued. I watched and I listened to this guy build a snare drum out of a 14-inch diameter piece of PVC pipe. I have no idea what this is actually supposed to be used for. I'm thinking either a water main or a sewer line or something like that. But this is a 14-inch diameter PVC pipe. It's also a ½ inch thick. I don't know if you can quite see that, make that out on camera. ½ inch thick. This thing weighs a ton. This is a 14-inch stave, walnut and maple shell, also a ½ inch thick. This weighs about half with the hardware that this does without the hardware. Go figure. Anyway, so I'm watching this video, and at the end of the video he gives a playing example, and I don't know if you'll agree with me or not when you watch his video, but I gotta tell you, I thought this drum, his drum, sounded amazing. So in his video, he put a link to the place where he bought this pipe. So I got on their website and I looked around all their links, and unfortunately they only sell 14-inch diameter PVC pipe in lengths of like 5 feet long, and for like maybe $500 or $600. I don't remember. Clearly more than I would need and far more than I would want to spend. So I reached out to Brandon, the guy who made the video, again linked in my description. And I just said, hey man, if you have any extra of that PVC pipe, if you don't mind, could I buy some from you? He was agreeable. We came to a price that I thought was fair. I'm not going to tell you what that is, because if you decide to reach out to Brandon, I don't know what he's going to charge you, or if he even has any more of this pipe left. Don't hold me to anything, and don't be a dick if you reach out to him. I reached out to him, super cool guy, and he cut a 5.5 inch piece of PVC pipe. So, a couple of things that I've already done off camera. First thing, and I'll insert a little bit of a video, I sanded it down because when I received this, it was just in a box. So the exterior of this PVC shell was all filthy and scratched up and whatnot. Could have used some bubble wrap, Brandon. But I sanded it down. Also, I sanded it down with a pretty aggressive grit. I used 80 grit at first because drum heads will fit onto this, but they don't fit properly. Most snare drum shells, you know, we call them a 14-inch shell, but they're actually more like 13 6/8 to allow for the collar of the drum head to fit over the shell properly. Let me give you an example. Okay, so I have here an Evans EC reverse dot head that I'm going to use on this drum. And just as an example, let me show you. This is, again, my 14-inch stave maple walnut. And as you can see, the head just plops right on. It sits, it doesn't wobble, it's nice and firm, because this is a properly sized drum shell. This is a sewer pipe. So when I go to put the head on, even after I've taken off a considerable amount by sanding, I have to push it on. You know what I mean? And then to take it off, see that? So it does, once it's on, it does seat properly. There's no wrinkles. It's nice and smooth. So I don't think it's going to affect the tuning that much. Plus, you know, it's a snare drum. I'm going to crank it high pitched, as most of us do. Also, I mentioned I did a couple of things off camera. The other thing that I did off camera was I took this shell to the good folks at Precision Drum in upstate New York. Where I live in New Jersey is not too terribly far from Precision Drum headquarters. And George, the owner of Precision Drum, cut dual 45-degree bearing edges and a snare bed. And he did so while I waited, which was pretty cool. I wasn't expecting that. So thanks to the good folks at Precision Drum, I have a really good, very smooth bearing edge on both sides of this drum. And I think that is going to make this drum sound as good as can be expected. I do not have high hopes. Like I said, the drum that Brandon made, and you'll hear it when you watch his video, to me, it sounded phenomenal, but he clearly had some processing going on. So he didn't give a good example of what the drum actually sounds like. I think, being a drummer for as long as I am, I think I have a pretty good idea of the fundamental tone, if you will, of his drum. And so I was willing to take a chance. Again, I don't have very high hopes for this drum. It's just a fun project. So let me also show you what I'm going to use for a lug. I got these knockoff Yamaha style, I don't know what you call them, just Yamaha style lugs. Originally, I wanted to mount these lugs kind of like that, but unfortunately, after cutting the bearing edges, this is more of a 5-inch drum. This combined length makes up 3 inches. That's not enough space, so I'm going to have to offset these lugs a little bit so they'll mount more like that. I'm okay with that. It'll be cool. All right, next step, layout mat, and let's get to measuring. Okay, voiceover time. So if you're new to drum making, you'll definitely want to get yourself a layout mat. And I got this one from drummaker.com. Then I had it laminated at Kinko's. I'm taping it down to my table here so that it doesn't move around as I move around in measuring. And what I'm doing now is aligning the location of the snare strainer to the center marks on the mat. And here I'm using a T-square to just draw some basic lines of where the lugs are going to go. Once all the measuring is complete, you can see I offset the lugs about a ½ inch basically, and you can also see the little measurements there for the mounting holes of each lug. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this old rusty nail here as what's called a center punch. And a center punch, you'll see in a second here, what I'm going to do is basically just put a little divot into the shell at the location of each lug mounting hole. And this way, when I start to drill, that little divot, which I'll show you a close-up in a second, you can see there, those little divots will prevent the drill bits from creeping away and scratching the shell or just, offsetting the measurement. In order to get a properly sized hole, what I'm doing here is I'm using the drill bit and basically just lining it up with the mounting hole or the mounting foot of the lug until I match the diameter of the mount to the diameter of the bit. And what I'm doing is I'm starting with a very small drill bit and working my way up to the actual size. As you can see here, drilling through PVC makes quite the mess. These strands of PVC plastic just came off in, like, as you can see, just long strands. And here I'm just test fitting, making sure that all of my measurements were correct and that the holes are nice and tight. And you can see that the lugs line up with the lines. And so now I'm just cleaning up the holes with some 220 grit sandpaper. just cleaning up any frayed edges and whatnot. And here I'm going to do a complete test fit of all of the lugs. Now what you'll notice is the lugs obviously have 2 mounting holes, but as you can see here, there's only one. I only drilled through the shell 1 hole. And that's a trick I discovered that Tama likes to do. So basically, I drilled through the, let's just say, bottom mounting hole and only put a divot in the shell for the top mounting hole. The idea is, the less hardware, the more resonant, etc., etc. So here is the shell with heads on, test fit successful. So now everything comes back off, and I'm doing some wet sanding here. And wet sanding just keeps the sandpaper from getting gunked up with dust. It also minimizes the amount of dust that flows up into the air, because you don't really want to be breathing in PVC because it's just plastic. I'm also, through the sanding process, basically erasing all of the pencil marks. And now that the sanding is done, I'm putting a very, very thin coat of polyacrylic, which is just a matte finish acrylic. And the only reason I'm doing that is to protect the shell from getting dirty and fingerprinted and, whatever. It's not in any way meant to enhance the finish. It's a flat finish anyway, and this is what it looks like. It's just a flat, and I'm letting the white of the PVC shine through. Here, what I'm doing is I'm applying some racing stripes with this very cool chromed mylar tape. And the mylar is essentially the same type of plastic that our drum heads are made out of. But in this case, it's just I'm just adding some racing stripes just for some flair, just kind of eyeballing it and using the mounting holes as guides. So that's the first 2. And then here I'm putting a wider stripe down the middle. And the tape is extremely thin, but it's also extremely strong, and it doesn't like to move side to side or laterally. So it's very easy to line it up and get it in a straight line. Once you get if you start the line straight, it should be straight for the whole thing. Here I'm mounting just a screw-in air vent. And now it's time to install all of the hardware. So all the lugs go back on, the snare strainer goes on, and everything gets tightened and mounted, and this is what the shell looks like with the racing stripes, the chrome racing stripes. I think it looks pretty cool. I'm using just a generic pearl strainer. And for strainer snare straps, I like to use this ribbon. And what you do is you measure out the length that you need, you slice off the ends, and then you take a lighter and very carefully just singe the ends of the nylon ribbon, and that prevents it from fraying. And here is the drum, all complete. So now to tune it up and give you as good of a sound example as I can. Keep in mind, I don't have any fancy recording equipment, so the sound that you'll hear is just recorded on my cell phone. I'll tell you why now. That's a loud snare. Are you shotting it right now? Yeah. Oh. Only for the... Alright guys, well that's about it for this video. This has been a long one. This has been a long project and a long journey to get to where this drum is now. Final thoughts? I think the drum sounds great. I know you can't really tell because I don't really have proper studio miking equipment. I also apologize for my camera fluctuating with the exposure. You know, the best I could do is record what this drum sounds like on my cell phone. And I know that it doesn't sound great from your perspective. From my perspective, I'm astounded at how good this PVC shell has turned out. For what I play, for the way I play, the kind of music that I play with my band, this snare drum is absolutely amazing. So I could not be happier. So again, I want to thank that guy Brandon for just being cool enough to cut a chunk of his PVC pipe off and sell it to me. I think that was super cool. And yeah, it's been a great project. If you're a drum builder, if you can get your hands on a 14-inch diameter PVC pipe, give it a try for yourself. I think you'll be happy with the results. Anyway, I hope you liked the video. Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more. And also, if you're browsing around my channel, you'll notice that most of my videos have to do with hiking and exploring and urban exploring and going into abandoned buildings and stuff like that. It's summer 2018. I've got a whole host of places that I'm going to be going this summer. So if you're into that sort of thing, again, subscribe, stay tuned, and thanks for watching, guys.